I want to add my own thanks to those of you who are here because of Sally Starr. Uh, she uh, she was quite a performer. We loved her. Our kids loved her. Our grandchildren have no idea. But then that's the way things go. And I wanted to make an announcement, and that is the Gitter is in the house. And he's having a conference right now. But as soon as that conference is over, we want to call Jerry Blavat up to the podium.
While you do that, I want to tell everybody that, about a week ago, I ran into Charlie Gracie in the supermarket. Literally, I hit him with my shopping cart, and he turned around, and I said, Charlie, and he said, Jerry. And he didn't sue me after that. And then he may be limping a little bit, but he's doing well. Anyhow, Jerry Blavat's up first.
Yo, Sally, they're playing your song. Let me tell you, hi, Maria. How are you, Maria? I always love coming here because I see so many people that have been a part of my life. But the one lady that we honor tonight is really very, very, very special. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about Sally. She was born in 1923, and she started a show with her sister. And what most people don't know, she had polio at a very early age, and that's why she didn't have children. And she loved kids, and that followed her career throughout her entire career. She really began on radio, and she married a fellow by the name of Jesse, who was Ranger Joe. And they used to do a radio show together on CBS, which is very interesting, and also on the station, which I wind up purchasing with Sam Rappaport, 1540. Back then, it was a country station. And in 1955, and Maria can tell you this, Channel 6 was the low station on the podium. And Walter Annenberg and Triangle bought that, and it was Triangle Publications back then. And Bob Horn had been very successful from 1953 with Bandstand. So they wanted to follow up with something to keep the viewers that were watching Bandstand. So they took Sally Starr, and Charlie Gracie has a beautiful picture when Sally Starr was really a knockout. 1955, it was called the Starr Theater. It was not Sally Starr. And they would show cowboy movies before it became Popeye Theater. And Sally, being as feisty as she always was, really beefed to George Kohler and to Roger Klipp because they were showing cowboy movies. And she introduced a franchise called Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts was the first franchise in Philadelphia. Because of that, Roger Klipp and George Kohler said, wait, we got to do this. This person's a star. So it then became Sally Starr's Popeye Theater. And she had every major star. I will never forget when Sammy Davis was in town, because it's in my book. I was 13 years of age, and I was the head of the dance committee. So Sammy is walking, because in those days, and Maria can tell you, the talent would not come through the front door. They would go through the employee entrance. So Sammy is walking to do the Bob Horn show, and he sees this, and Sammy always had an eye for blondes. If you read his book, especially Kim Novak. So he sees Sally Starr. Wow, is she a cowgirl? I said, no. I said, she happens to be very, very famous. So on and on, every major star, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, Dale Evans, the Three Stooges, whenever they were in town, they would visit Sally Starr. She was an exceptional woman because she had a sense of show business. And I don't have to tell you that when Channel 6 canceled the show in 1971, the station got more protest mail than ever, because that's how popular Sally was. And I go back when I was a kid, you guys go back when she was a kid. You loved her because she represented what Philadelphia was back in those days. And of course you had Pixan, you had Gene London, you had Chief Halftown, and Larry Ferraro, you can go on and on and on. But Sally Starr was a very special human being because she never forgot the audience. Even when she was sick, and I would take her with me, she would embrace the kids. She would hug the kids. So it was truly a veteran of show business that she was. And I am so delighted that our world of broadcasters honor this wonderful woman who at the end, very few people were there at the end. Some of them are over here right now. When she was in trouble, she reached out for a lot of people. Sally was my friend, so whenever she was in trouble, what do you need, Sally? You want some macaroni? You want scalò? Whatever you want. She said, I want scalò. So I would give her the scalò. But it's a pleasure for me to be here with all of you in honoring this very special, wonderful lady. And I want to wish you all the best of the holidays to you and your family. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry.
I'm going to steal this away. Jerry and I and Ed Cunningham worked together doing the doo-wop shows down at Channel 12. And back in the day, you had to count down the tape because it couldn't start. You couldn't just press a button and poof, it was there. So they're counting it down, and we cheat 5. So we go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 5, 4, 3. 3 seconds from now, the tape starts. Jerry says, and let me tell you another thing. Thank God we had Ed Cunningham, my old college buddy. And he said, hold that thought, and you'll tell us that in a minute. And we hit the show just like that. I mean, thank God we have him.
And since Jerry mentioned Ed Cunningham, let's bring Mr. Cunningham out right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, by the way, so much for having me follow Jerry Blavat. That's greatly appreciated. I'm here to talk about Sally very briefly. As Jerry pointed out, we worked together on a lot of projects at WHYY. The way I got to meet her, and I was going to make a big point about how I may be the only person in this room who had kind of a twin relationship with her in the sense that I grew up watching her because I'm the same age as Jerry Wilkinson, and then I got a chance to work with her, but Jerry preempted me on that. So that makes 2 of us in this room at least who had the opportunity to watch her on Popeye Theater in the old days, and then I did have the opportunity one time to work with her. What happened was, gosh, this was 7 years ago now? Well,
Channel 10 with her.
yes, actually, and I was actually even going to say that, but thank you nonetheless, Jerry. It was. Thank you. Yes, that is true. I did. The idea was I had nurtured a thought for a long time of doing a program all those years later, a little documentary on WHYY about all these aforementioned people that Jerry Blavat mentioned, everybody from Gene Crane to John Zackerly as Roland, and all the great kid show hosts who graced our airwaves in the 50s and 60s when Philadelphia really was, and it certainly is to this day, a hotbed of talent of local broadcasters. So I always wanted to do that because we had always grown up with it, and we finally got the chance to put it together. And when the go-ahead came, said, I've got to get Sally for the show, because if I don't, there's no show. You don't have a show about Philadelphia kid show hosts without Sally Starr. So yes, I had the opportunity to meet her, and Jerry Blavat was absolutely right. She was a feisty lady. I'll tell you what, I loved what she did. She said, listen, there was a big picture of her on the wall of her home in Atco, New Jersey. of her in her heyday, back in the 50s, just looking as beautiful as you can imagine, all outfitted in her cowgirl regalia with her 6 guns at the ready. She said, why don't you get a picture of that? Start there and then pull out and show me today. And that's what she did. And she narrated it. She was the pro that she was. That was me then, she says. It comes out, and here I am now. Ta-da! And because she was proud of her wrinkles. It was as simple as that, and she said so very readily. But she took nothing from anybody, and that did her well, because life was often difficult. She lost a husband. She lost most of her possessions in a disastrous fire at her home in Florida, but that feistiness brought her through. And we know that the Three Stooges, among others, were beneficiaries of Sally's talent. And, and that ties into something, one of the sad stories, certainly for me, in putting together our program on Philadelphia's favorite kid show hosts, was that there was almost nothing on kinescope or film or videotape of Sally Starr in the heyday of Popeye Theater. There were some things that she did later for a station in New Jersey, but not back in her heyday. But thanks to the Three Stooges, who thanked her and other kid show hosts around the country by putting her in one of their final films. It is not an Academy Award winner by any stretch of the imagination, I assure you. It was called The Outlaws Is Coming. And that is not my bad diction, my bad grammar. That was theirs. The Outlaws Is Coming. And Sally was invited to be in that movie playing Belle Starr. And the script called for Sally to have a cat fight with another actress by the name of Nancy Kovac, who portrayed Calamity Jane. And the way Sally told us, Nancy Kovac said to her, now when we have this fight, you're going to rip at my dress, see, and that'll be great. You'll just love that. And Sally said to me in our interview, she said, oh, I said, you want me to rip your blouse off, huh? He said, that's right. She says, well, I didn't like it, but I did it. Now that I just want to say to you is, if you never have any inclination at all to rent The Outlaws Is Coming, that might be a reason right there. Because let's face it, gents, we all love watch a good cat fight now and then. So, and yes, she did rip the blouse off. So that, but beyond that, and I'm kidding, of course, but this was a chance, one of your few chances today to see Sally Starr in action. It was a little hint of the star power that she brought. And yes, Jerry was right. When we were doing publicity for our show before it went on the air, our publicity called for Sally to be on the NBC 10 morning show, and we were there with her. Well, the place was packed, and when they introduced Sally Starr, that place just went crazy. I mean, it was as if the president or the Pope or somebody, they would never get a response like that. They were so thrilled to see Sally Starr. No, oh no, I was hanging around in the distance. I was excess baggage, no doubt about that. And one other time, something we filmed for our show was Sally making an appearance at an ice cream parlor in North Wildwood, New Jersey. And again, the star power was on display. She was signing copies of this and that and the other thing, and people were clutching their Sally Starr memorabilia for all it was worth. It was really something to see. So the only thing I can say is I thank goodness that I had that one opportunity to work with one of my great idols from when I was growing up. It was wonderful to meet her and work with her. We've had a lot of TV stars locally in Philadelphia over the years, but you know and I know that nobody shone more brightly than Sally Starr. So thank you guys for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Ed. And I guess those of you who remember the person who followed Sally Starr at Channel 6 with the children's show was Captain Noah. And I guess you would expect that he would be a presenter at this event. I want you to know that we didn't forget him, and it wasn't, a slip of the mind or whatever. We did approach him, and he had initially show some interest in being here. We had expected to see him here, but he canceled out at the last minute. I'm saying out to say that, no, we didn't forget Carter Breyer. The next presenter is someone who doesn't need an introduction, so I won't give him one. No. Charlie Gracie, ladies and gentlemen.
All the way to Cape May. Well, thank you for inviting me here once again, Mr. Wilkinson, Pat Delsey, one of my heroes. This is one of the first guys that played my records in WCMC in Camden, New Jersey, around 1951, early 52. I'll never forget you as long as I live. You could walk in those days and hand the guy the record, he'd play it. Now you got to call the corporation up. They really ruined our industry. But I'm not here for me. I'm here because of Charlie Starr, of course. Now, I only brought about a half a dozen of these. And some of the tables may have them, some may not. This is an early picture of Sally and I. I must have been about 26 years old. She might have been, I was 26 years old once. And she might have been maybe 36, 37. I think we were maybe 10, 11, 12 years apart. But what a beautiful young lady. Gorgeous girl. She was really gorgeous, you know. And I wasn't too bad looking either. But anyway, I'm so happy to be here tonight. Of course, the first time I met Sally was in Camden, New Jersey. There was a mayor there. I can't remember his name. He was sort of heavy-set. He had a little mustache at the time. You remember? Mayor what? Is that was his name? Nardi? Yeah. Well, that's when we met for the first time. And it was a thrill, of course, you know, growing up in Philadelphia, as I did in South Philadelphia. We used to watch, you know, Sally in the afternoon whenever we had a chance, and all the other dignitaries from WFIL, Channel 6. And then I was invited by a fellow named Mac McGuire, who was a disc jockey on WPEN many years ago, and they had this show in Pitman, New Jersey, in honor of one of the great movie stars named Preston Foster, who was born in Pitman, New Jersey. So I was invited to that, and I was thrilled to be on the same stage with a guy I used to see at the movies for 10 cents. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 cents, folks. I know I'm old, but you guys remember 10 cents to the movies? Penny tax. And on that show was Preston Foster, Gabby Hayes. I love Gabby Hayes. Little Jimmy Dickens, Sally Starr, and I was invited there. I really had no right to be there because I didn't have any big name at the time. I didn't have any hit records, but I thought I died and went to heaven that night. And Sally was there, gorgeous, beautiful young lady. And as the years went by, we had occasion to meet. And then I never forget one year I worked for her. She had a club in New Jersey. And I worked her nightclub with my band. We were there for, I guess, maybe a couple of weeks. And as time went on, I seemed to get closer to her because I wouldn't say a lot of people abandoned her, but she was kind of on a solo kick towards the end there. She had a few friends that would help her out occasionally. And we'd go to her birthday parties and so forth. And she didn't have a lot of money, so we'd try to raise money for her at times and help her out. And about a year or so before she passed on, you could see it was coming, as it will come to all of us, you know. But just knowing her in my lifetime was a thrill for me and my wife and my children. And she was just a wonderful person. She was, what you see is what you got. And that's very important, right, Bill Wright Sr.? You know what I'm talking about. I look out there, Jerry City, see some people who made him famous. Well, he was one of the gentlemen. And Tom LeMain's out there somewhere. Where's Tommy at? I know you. Tommy's another guy that helped my career, and of course with Pat Delsey. And you guys helped us all. And guys and people like Sally Starr, who we associated with, made us more popular because she was a star. She might have been a local star within a 100-mile radius or so, but she was a superstar in her time. And, you know, some people get internet famous nationally. Some people get famous internationally. She was a local hero, and everybody that within a 150-mile radius knew who Sally Starr was. And the only thing I'm disappointed about the end of her life was all the money she made for that channel. Now, I'm a funny guy. I tell you what's on my mind, Channel 6. At the end, when things were, but somebody could have made a phone call to somebody. See, once the corporations take over, there's no, you know, get a few bucks for this woman, let her live in dignity the few last years of her life. That's one thing I'm disappointed about her career. But hey, listen, we did our part. We tried to help her, and today we're here to honor her name. And God bless her. She's in a wonderful place now. And when her time comes, if you're lucky, you might sit next to her at dinner, or lunch, or breakfast. So I'm honored to be here tonight. Thanks for asking me. God bless you all. Have a wonderful Hanukkah, wonderful Christmas. Whatever you're celebrating, just don't come knocking on my door because I already gave. Thanks.
With somebody new, but I'm crazy about you. You butterfly. You treat me mean, you're making me cry.
We have a couple of people who worked at Channel 6 with Sally Starr, and they have a very short story to tell you about one of their dealings with Sally. Now, this should only take about 3 minutes. Your life is worth 3 minutes. Steve? I guess no one here listens to KYW News, right? Come on up. Is Mike joining you, or did he change his mind? I'm sorry, what? Mike? Oh.
No, I just wanted to say I worked with Sally for many years. We did a week in Wildwood, New Jersey, which still rates after 44 years at Channel 6 as the best fun and best show I ever did. We did a week in Wildwood. She made sure that every night there was a mayor from either Wildwood Crest, Wildwood, or North Wildwood would have us at one of the restaurants for dinner. She always made sure the crew was taken care of. I know for Bill Russell, she gave Bill a German Shepherd that she had. She used to take the crew to the Latin Casino. I'm talking from a position of somebody that was with her. But one of the things I do remember, I was thinking of different things when Jerry sent out the notice that this was going to be about Sally. Years ago, with Walter Annenberg owning WFIL in those days, Richard Nixon came in. He wasn't president at the time, but he came in to do a show that they were doing. So I guess my job in those days, I was starting out, but I had to take him to the door. And as we're walking out through that round building, anyone that's ever been in there, remember in those days there were 3 studios, and there was a glass passageway where there was what we call the airlock. And as we're walking out, Richard Nixon looks in and sees all these kids in the studio, and they're all in costume, and he turns around to me and says, "What's going on in there?" And I said, "Well, it's around Halloween. I guess Sally's having a Halloween show." He says, "Oh my, that looks nice. Could I stop in?" So we took Richard Nixon in to see the Sally Starr show. He appeared on there, and as usual, she was, it was a lot of fun. It was something that wasn't planned. There was a lot of laughs, and there was just many, many things. But probably the thing that made Sally special and why we talk about her and why we're talking about her today is her honesty. If you worked with her in a show, if she had a bad day, you certainly knew it when she came in the studio. I mean, you were prepared. If she had a bad day, you heard about it. But she went on. But the one story, and I don't know if it's not complimentary, it's not non-complimentary, but it is Sally. Years ago, she'd come in when I did one of the shows, she was on at 5 o'clock at night. So she'd come in around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Usually she'd come in at 5:01, but I don't want to say that. But anyway, she came in one day, and up in the talent area, apparently management had put a secretary up there in her office, figuring they could use that cubby hole for her space because she didn't come in till late in the afternoon. Anyway, the secretary came in, and apparently Sally had in that office a fish tank, and apparently the secretary came in, unplugged the fish tank, pushed it out in the lobby, pushed it out in the hallway, and all the fish died. Sally comes in at 4 o'clock or whenever she comes in, all the fish are dead. And of course she was upset about it because she loved animals and she's just great to work with. But anyway, she comes in and but when it's time to go on the show, she comes in the studio and she sits down on a chair. And then meanwhile, the director, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the theme hits, everything goes. Next thing you know, she didn't say anything to anybody. Look up, there's nobody at the county store or whatever what her set was. And she was just sitting there in the chair, and I look at her, and meanwhile the director's screaming in my ear, where is she? Where is she? And I'm trying, and you got to understand, this conversation is going back and forth with an order wire that she's not going on the air. She's upset, and it's in her contract that if she's sick, she doesn't have to go on the air. Meanwhile, so now the theme's over, we go to commercials, and all this stuff is going on, and finally somebody came up and talked to her, and about 2 minutes later after the show, she went on the air and everything went normal. But it's an interesting story that happens. Television, I'm sure things happen. But she was extremely honest. She was wonderful to work with. She was generous. A lot of times she was late, never made the newspapers. She was late because she stopped at a hospital, and I believe it, to see a kid that had burns or a kid that couldn't walk well or whatever it was. And she truly was a star. And I, like I said before, the greatest thing about her was her honesty. And that's it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Mazzillo. I'm an old WFIL director. In fact, I put Jerry Blavitt's show, Jerry's Place, on the air. That the afternoon was a talk show and not a dance show. Anyway, my experience with Sally Starr was, of course, she was a consummate perfectionist, easy to work with, never had a bit of problem. Now I'll give you a real-time situation as a director would be, and it involves also Steve Sachs, because he's an old hand at WFIL. He was there long before I got there. I was there from 67 to 72. Anyway, so we're doing a show, and after the second break, I told Steve, I said, tell Sally she's got about 1.5 minutes on the end, and we'll take her out with theme music and put up the slide, and that's it. You never had to worry about Sally filling the time exactly. She could do it precisely. So I see the 1 minute mark go by, I give him a standby in the studio. Sally gets up in front of the camera. Mike's checked, okay. 10-second cue, standby studio. Now, something I had to get used to at WFIL. As a director, you had to punch your own buttons. Now, other stations I worked at, I always had a switching engineer. But so I'm checking out where I'm going, and I said, 3, 2, 1. I punch it, and I look up the screen, and there's no Sally Starr. I said, Steve, where's Sally? He said, she just passed out. Hit black, call for an ID slide, give me a 30-second promo on film, Paul Norton fill out over the ID, and that's it. Pick up the phone, somebody get an ambulance, Sally's passed out. But that's my story. And next week she came back and she was fine, but she had problems with her medication, and it kind of wore her down a little bit sometimes. But she was a great gal, easy to work with, as a lot of you people were. And there were some noogers in the crowd too, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Bud Gallo still here?
I just want to take about 45 seconds and thank the broadcast pioneers and the board of directors for the condolences on my wife's passing last week. And I couldn't answer all of your letters, so I'm going to give you a blanket answer. Thank you very much for your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Sally Starr had a show on WCAM at a time when Pat Delsey was there. Pat Delsey was the DJ, then became the manager of the station. Then he ultimately bought the station. And when he left there, the station was his property. So we'd like to hear from Pat Delsey.
Thank you very much, Diego. Diego has been on WCAM, started his career on WCAM 100 years ago. And of course, we have Bud Gallo, who was just up a couple of seconds ago. He and I worked together at WRCV and KYW, and we were on the air when they made the switch at KYW and RCV. At that time, WRCV was a big band station, but then they were bought out again by KYW, which had been there years before. KYW was in Cleveland. They had to come back to Philadelphia. So at that time, I worked there with Bud. And Sunday morning, I got a note from the general manager that at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is the time that I was on doing the news, they said, read this. And it read, good morning, this is WRCV, 1060 kilocycles, owned and operated by RCA Victor, and blah, blah, blah. And then I had a pause for about 2 seconds, and then say, good morning, this is KYW, owned and operated by Westinghouse at 1060 kilocycles. So I was there making the momentous change when WRCV became KYW. So we worked together there. But my reason for coming up today is to say good things about Sally. I'm so happy that we are honoring her and that all of you are here today to help us do that, because she was and is a gutsy lady, and I'm sure she is a gutsy lady up there in heaven right now, doing the Sally Starr show in heaven. But she had worked at WCM for me at the station. But a story that I want to mention to you was mentioned briefly by Ed Cunningham. Now, she always made appearances in the Delaware Valley, and we did a program every Saturday afternoon from a garden center in South Jersey at the G-Boys. And Sally, for 20 years, used to come out to G-Boys on the Thanksgiving Day weekend for the parade and to be making a guest appearance there. And she did this regularly. And when we did the garden show from noon until about 1 or so, and then when the garden show was over, we had a booth which they constructed for us in the garden, right in the middle of the garden center. And when Sally came after the parade, she would come in and go into the booth, and I would introduce her, and all the people would line up. And I'm talking about kids, their mothers, and the grandmothers, saying that this is Sally Starr. And the line went all the way to Route 70, which is a big, big line of people wanting to talk with her, speak with her, sit on her lap, and things like that. But one year, she was supposed to come back. She was down in Florida. She had moved back down to Florida to her home there. And she was scheduled to come up to Cherry Hill to do the show. Actually, it was in Marlton. And about 2 days before the show, we got a call from the police in Florida wanting to know if Sally Starr was there yet, because they couldn't find her. What had happened when she planned to come up, she stopped at the gas station to fill up the car and getting ready for the trip up. And as she was getting the car gassed, she heard sirens, fire alarm sirens. And she jokingly, which we all do usually, said, I hope that's not my house. And she actually said that to the gas station attendant. I hope that's not my house. Unfortunately, it was her house. But she never went back to her house. She didn't know that it was burning. She was driving up from Florida all the way up to Philadelphia, to South Jersey. And they were trying to locate her about a couple of hours after the fire. see if they could catch her on the road somewhere. They never got a hold of her. She came all the way up to Cherry Hill or Marlton, not knowing that her house and all of her possessions were destroyed. But she was a gutsy lady, as I said, and she kept on going from that unusual circumstance to later on in life, continuing to make the appearances. A wonderful person, always had time for the kids. If anything, she might have been gutsy at the station, but she was always there for the kids from day one. And that's my feeling about Sally Starr. Again, thank you for coming. Diego?
I'm told that Chuck Darrow of the Philadelphia Daily News has an original song about Sally. No song, just stories. Okay, we'll take that. But I think we are going to hear a song about her by Big Bear. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you don't, let's put it this way. My voice is so bad that when my kids were small, my wife threatened to have me up on child abuse charges if I ever sang to them. So that's definitely not what you want to do. But first of all, what I want to do is thank Jerry and the Pioneers. It's such an honor for me to be here today, not only to address this august body of so many people who I grew up, I'm not a peer, I'm not a colleague. I am one of those faceless people that you spoke to, and who connected on so many levels with us through the decades. So thank you for that. And is Keeter still here? Oh, he left, okay. No, never mind. Now, I want to start by saying there are a few things in my life that I'm particularly proud of. For instance, still being with the girl that I married 30 years ago today, for one, and having the two greatest daughters that any father could ever hope for. And finally, after a long time working for the only newspaper I ever wanted to write for, which is the Daily News. But right up there on that list is my little role in Sally Starr's life and career. And I figured you guys, because this is something that's not quite as well known, everybody knows how wonderful she was and what a huge star and presence she was in the Delaware Valley for decades. But I did cover her and write about her many, many times over the past 25 years or so, including, unfortunately, writing her obituary for the Daily News last January. But why I'm here is because Sally, as several other speakers have noted, she disappeared. She literally went off the grid when she went to Florida after Channel 6. Well, she went to Channel 29 for a cup of coffee, and then she went down to Florida, where nobody had any idea what had happened to Sally Starr. You probably remember that. And I want to take you back to the summer of 1984. At the time, I was not writing, and I was the Director of Public Relations for Chiara and Associates, John Chiara. I know a lot of you are very familiar with my old boss, John Chiara. And one day he came into my office and he said, I want you to start thinking about the RV Roundup. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers even what the RV Roundup was, but it was a recreational vehicle expo that was being held that year. They had it several years. I think the week after Labor Day of 1984 at the old Civic Center. And he said, start thinking of ways to promote this. And let's face it, RVs today are not a particularly big sell in Philadelphia. And you live in the South Philly or Northeast, where are you going to keep it? So, and back then, 30 years ago, it was probably even less, they were probably even less popular and part of our local culture. So I had to come up with something that was going to get more than a listing in a calendar in the Friday weekend sections in the newspapers. And I had no idea what to do, and I was sort of worried about it. And then the gods gifted me with a column. Don Haskin had a column back in the day in the Daily News called The Ear. And it was sometimes politics, local life, whatever. And one day I opened it up at lunchtime, as I always read the Daily News at lunch, and there is a column how the day before Ken Garland and his listeners were having an on-air discussion, what was the name of Sally Starr's horse? And the answer, if you don't remember, was Pal. And Don apparently was not satisfied with the consensus of the name. And God bless him, being a great reporter, Don somehow found Sally's phone number and called her in Fort Lauderdale. and said, hey, this is where she's down there. I think she was working as maybe airport security at the time or something, some crazy job like that she should never have had to do. And again, the angels started to sing and the light bulbs went on. I'm going to bring Sally Starr back to make her what's more perfect? The RV Roundup's kind of a Western thing anyway. I'm going to get Sally Starr to be the official hostess of the RV Roundup. And I was sure that boy, this was a home run right out of the park, and and it would be hailed as the greatest idea ever. Nobody thought it was a good idea. My boss thought it was a stupid idea. Sally Starr, she's still alive. The client thought it was a dumb idea, but most of all, because it was so Sally thought it was a stupid idea. I called her, I explained to her who I was and what I wanted, from her to do, and I swear her first response is, "Why would you even ask me that? Who even remembers me?" Can you believe that? Who remembers me? And that, but yet I was able to talk everybody into it because, I knew. And I remember my dad, rest his soul, when I told him, and he's the same thing, Sally Starr, oh, come on, she's still alive? What? Why would anybody? And I said, Dad, think about this. From how many years, 10 years, 8 years, whatever it was, from the time I was 4 years old, I spent 2 hours a day, 5 days a week with this woman. How many hours a week during the day did I spend with you? And there are 500,000 at least people of my generation living in this area who can say the same exact thing. And we all know what happened after that. So, but let me jump ahead. So Sally came up, she agreed to do it, and that's when I really got to know Sally. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I was always kind of on eggshells because it was Sally Starr. I mean, who was more wholesome than Sally Starr? And you know what? Sally had a great sense. She was a great broad. I mean, I know she would love to hear me say that because she was. And a couple of things. For instance, somebody referred to Ed, I guess, right? You spoke about Outlaws is Coming. Adam West, Batman, and now Mayor West on Family Guy was the male lead in that. And Sally said she had great stories, and one of the stories was how on set Adam West hit on her, and when she turned him down, he hit on her husband. So, and she was not that sort of pure ultimate wholesomeness. And I remember one time, some of you may remember Paul Ramier, the founder of the Ribbit chain, who was an earthy person, to say the least. And we had lunch over at Ribbit one afternoon while she was in town doing publicity. And Paul, in the middle way, told a joke whose punchline I would not share in mixed company. I just won't do it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, Sally Starr sitting here and having listened to that. And Sally roared louder than any of us at the joke. So, and she was just, and another time now, you also may remember something that she probably wasn't very proud of, but, throughout my childhood and lifetime, there were always these rumors about Sally, that she had engaged in behavior that was very unbecoming a TV show host. That was always the rumors. I'm not going to get detail, but things that especially back then, today would make her a superstar, but 50 years ago would have totally ruined her career. And I said to her, I felt, we really got to know each other after, and I felt comfortable. And I said, Sally, I always heard these things, what's up? And her answer was the best. She goes, if I did everything that they say I did, I wouldn't be alive today. And that was good enough for me. That made perfect sense. So, having that relationship with Sally was just amazing to me. And but the most important thing was the roundup itself. And somebody else had mentioned like the yearbooks and everything. It happened exactly. Nobody cared about the roundups, the RVs. But we had, I don't know how many thousands of people who came and stood in line sometime for an hour or more. And each one, most of them had either a Sally Starr yearbook or a Sally Starr doll, which of course they made for years. But everybody had a story, and it was almost always the same story. Sal, you probably don't remember, but when you opened the Dunkin' Donuts up on 611, I was there. Sally, you came to our CYO carnival, whoever. And it was just, and the looks on those faces and the chance that these people finally got, because again, she had not been around, seen or heard from in a dozen years or so. It was truly one of the most satisfying, times of my life and events in my life. And from there, Pat talked about the G-Boys. That all stemmed from Sally coming back to do the RV roundup. When people say, wow, she is still alive, and people still love her. And the media was incredible. We did every news outlet, broadcast and print, in a 60-mile radius. Atlantic City, Reading, Lancaster, everybody was thrilled to do the Sally story, Wilmington. And we got Mayor Good to declare Sally Starr Day. But the point was that she came back, and for, up until she really got sick a couple of years ago, she had the radio shows, she did the personal appearances, Sally Starr Pizza and Atco. And I always said to her, every time I saw her, I always reminded her that regardless of what else I've ever done in my life, my ticket through the pearly gates is punched, because I was the one who brought Sally Starr back. And if it sounds like I'm bragging, you know what? Yeah, I am, and deal with it. And just let me finish, if I may, one last thing that I truly believe that this was Sally's doing. The person at whose house most days, or who I watched Sally most days with when I was a kid in the 60s, was my first and best friend from the ages of, I was from about 4 to 10. And for various reasons, geography, and we got older. The last time I saw this guy was in the summer, sometime in the summer of 1966. And for years I thought about him, but life goes on. But as I gotten older, I started to think more and more. And I just liked because he meant so much to me. He said he was my best friend for 5-6 years as a kid. And he had a very, even before the internet age, I didn't know how to get in. I know I had heard once he'd moved to New York, didn't really know. And he had such a common name that just looking in the phone book, or even later on Facebook, was meaningless, because there were just so many with the same name. And I just gave up. I figured I'll never hear from and see this person again. And I'm sad. So Sally dies on the last Sunday in January of this year. 10 days later, I'm in Key West on a carriage ride, a sightseeing tour of Key West. My wife and I had never been there. My phone rings. It's a 215 number, but it's one I don't recognize. But I answer it anyway, and it was my friend from Elbert Street up in the Northeast. And he said, I went online to read about Sally Starr's death, and I saw your story, and I had to call you. And I will go to my grave believing that was Sally's way of saying thank you to me, that she put us back, helped us up again for that. So that's all I wanted to say, and I dearly did love Sally.
Okay, we have Skip Clayton, host of the Racing Rap on WBCB Radio in Levittown. Would you please come up? Okay, I understand you're making an introduction. Somebody?
Thank you.
VIP?
I don't know. Just talking to this thing, it's what a broadcaster does. Thank you very much. I'm actually here to introduce Larry Schenk, who's the Vice President of Alumni Relations. He joined the Phillies back in 1964 as Director of Public Relations. It's a job that Larry held for 44 years. He's been nicknamed the Baron, and Larry worked in ballparks, Connie Mack Stadium, the Vet, Citizens Bank Park. I remember that old office you had at Connie Mack Stadium. You walked in, and you had to walk this way because of the old beams in that old ballpark, because if you didn't duck, you were going to bang your head. But Larry was there when closed up Connie Mack Stadium and then closed up the Vet. And the ceremonies that he put together for that were just second to none, fantastic. And bringing back people representing every baseball team that played in the Vet from 71 to 03. It was really a tremendous weekend. And he also opened up the new parks at the Vet and Citizens Bank Park. In fact, the press box, and rightfully so, is named after Larry down at Citizens Bank Park. And he went into semi-retirement after the 2007 season. Larry put together the first Phillies media guide in '64 and turned that into the best in Major League Baseball. He had to put the yearbook together every year. And Larry also received the Robert O. Fischel Award for Excellence in the field of public relations. Bob was the Yankees PR director for 20 years. And back in 1979, Larry and the late Alan Lewis, a great baseball writer, did a tremendous book, This Date in Phillies History, and Don Bostrom, Larry, and myself have updated it now. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Larry Schenk, who has been a great friend of mine since I started covering my first Phillies game back on April the 14th, 1969. Am I dating ourselves? Larry?
As Mayor Street once said, I'll be brief no matter how long it takes. This is quite an honor to be part of the stage where we're saluting Sally Starr. My only story about Sally Starr was watching it as a kid on a black and white Motorola TV about this big a long time ago, and she was an interesting entertainer. Being up here on the stage for a tribute for Sally Starr, I seem about as out of place as a hog at a Miss America pageant, I think. There must be a lot of Eagles fans here because the jokes aren't working. But Skip did mention the book, This Date in Phillies History, that he and Don Bostrom had revived. It's on a Kindle now. It's not a book itself, and it's available online. I don't own a Kindle. I'm still the old-fashioned person who wants something in my hands. They say it's 484 pages on a Kindle. How do you know? How do you know? You know, there's a lot of facts and figures in there. Skip, Harry Callis once nicknamed him Memory Lane because he knows everything about Phillies baseball and players and so forth. He's the only person who can tell you how many games Robin Roberts won when his zipper was open. But one of the dates in Phillies history is April 9th, 1963, and that's when Richie Ashburn became a broadcaster, joining By Som and Bill Campbell. No, that wasn't the Three Stooges. That wasn't the Three Stooges. But they're all broadcast pioneers, By Som and Bill Campbell, and actually, Bill just turned 90 in September, right, Pat? So he's not a pioneer anymore, he's a broadcast fossil, I think, isn't he? But Whitey was so great to be around all those years. As a kid growing up, I was a Del Ennis fan, and I told him that. He said, well, why? And I said, well, Del Ennis drove in all the runs. And he bristled and said, well, who do you think was on base all the time? And he won the batting title in 1958, the last time we had a batting champion. He went into John Quinn, the general manager. In those days, you negotiated one-on-one. There were no agents, no long-term contracts. And after winning the batting title, John Quinn offered him a contract increase of $1,000. And that didn't set very well with Richie. He says, Mr. Quinn says, well, Richie, you hit too many singles. And Richie said, if I hit them any harder, they'd have been outs. There's a couple broadcasting stories involving Whitey that I want to leave with you that are classics. On the air, we used to read birthdays and get well wishes and so forth. And when we had late night games at the vet and extra inning games, you got hungry in the press box. He would mention Celebre's Pizza, which was a small pizza shop in South Philadelphia. That's kind of redundant, isn't it? Small pizza shop in South Philadelphia. And next thing you know, Celebre's would deliver a pizza to the broadcast booth. So this went on and on and on. And finally, the marketing department said, Richie, you can't keep promoting Celebre's on the air. We have sponsors who pay millions of dollars. We can't be promoting other businesses like that. So Whitey figured it out. He said, we want to wish a special happy birthday tonight to the Celebre's brothers. They're twins, plain and pepperoni. And the last one was a story that involved my wife, Julie, who was in a car accident in Labor Day of 1996. She wasn't badly hurt. A pickup truck hit her in the front left car, smashed up the light and so forth. She hurt her right shoulder. So that evening, I'm at the ballpark having dinner with Richie Ashburn in the press club. I told Whitey about the accident with my wife, Julie. In the middle of the game, I went to the office for some unknown reason, and I turned on the TV, and there's Whitey. We want to send our best along to Ruly Carpenter. He's a former Phillies president. He was in a car accident today. I thought, geez, nothing's going right today. This pickup truck came and hit him in the left front fender, damaged the car a little bit, hurt his right shoulder. But that doesn't make sense, you know. So between innings, I go out to the booth, and I said, Whitey, where did you hear that story about Ruley? Well, I was having dinner with somebody tonight, and they told me. I said, it wasn't Ruley, it was Julie. And he said, well, you need to learn to speak more clearly. So he goes on the air and says, we've been given some misinformation on this. It was Julie, not Ruley, was in the car accident. Meanwhile, my wife's calling Ruley, his friends are calling Ruley to see how he is and so forth. Julie had surgery in January 1997. We're in spring training, and Whitey sees her with her arm in a sling. Jules, what happened to you? She says, I was in a car accident. Nobody tells me these things anymore. He was priceless. He was so good to be around. I don't know if anybody touched, I mean, Sally Starr touched an awful lot of people in her career. There's no doubt about that, but I think Whitey did too. And they're two tremendous icons, and I think it's really neat that we're all remembering Sally Starr here today. It was really nice, and thank you for having me.
By the way, in the early 70s, we had a brief encounter with Larry. College buddy of mine named Bruce Smallwood, who was news director at WPEN. That was in the days when they were rock and roll oldies, and he was Bruce Eric Smallwood. Didn't want to use his middle name, Leslie. But anyhow, we had an interest in going to the Phillies game. And Bruce said, well, we can get press tickets. I'll call back and give a report. And I said, well, what can I do? He said, well, we've already taped out the news. Call the disc jockey on the air with the score, and, you know, that qualifies. So that's what we did. And we sat right next to the slow-mo camera for Channel 17. But the funny thing is, at that time, they gave you free lunch, free dinner. And we would say, Larry, what's for dinner tonight? He said, hot dogs and sauerkraut. And we said, oh, I'm not sure we can come tonight. What's tomorrow? And he said, steak and baked potatoes. We'll come tomorrow night.